Hawks Nation, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the HawksFanTV podcast. As you can see, it is just me again this week. That is because our main man Alex was celebrating a little bit too hard last night. I know you guys saw him popping those Dom P bottles. He has been recovering all day and was not able to record this week, but that's okay. As I always say, for those of you who are big Alex fans, don't worry, our guy will be back next week. So yeah, guys, I'll just go ahead and jump right into it because biggest news of arguably the entire season for the Hawks has finally happened, and that is that the Atlanta Hawks have finally let go of Nate McMillan as their head coach. I'm for one, I'm pretty happy about that. I don't want to act like I'm celebrating a guy getting fired, but there's obviously a little more context to the situation than that. I think this is obviously the best move for the Hawks. And we as fans can just be happy and excited about this and kind of leave it at that, man. We don't have to make it deeper than that. You know what I mean? Just happy that we're getting a fresh start with our head coach and can kind of move past some of this negativity that it feels like we've been stuck in for the last season, maybe 2 seasons here. So yeah, finally got fired, man. I do want to give him the respect that he does deserve. I know it doesn't seem like I necessarily respect him a lot, but I do. I know he's a very decent man off the court, and did a lot of great things for the Hawks. Gave us a lot of memories as Hawks fans that I know we didn't necessarily have before. And what I'm getting at is that we won 2 Eastern Conference Finals games with him. He's the only coach in Atlanta Hawks history that has 2 conference finals wins under his belt. So, those were awesome memories. I was high on Nate, just like a lot of other people were. I know we're kind of getting some gripe from other fan bases about that now. I don't really care. Give us all the crap you want. I'm still happy about it. And I still mean what I meant back in 2001 when I was happy about Nate turning that team around for us. I'm sure a lot of you saw that meme video, if you will, of Regulate by Warren G and Nate Dogg. And, it was hilarious at the time. It's honestly even funnier now. But yeah, it's something that I think we can all kind of just, put that in our rearview mirror and kind of move on from it. Because, I think the best way to kind of describe what Nate was for the Hawks, I was saying to my buddies in a group chat earlier, Nate was kind of like a rebound, right? You just got out of this really horrible relationship that just was sour and just did not end well, and that was Lloyd Pierce, right? So you get this rebound, and at first you love the rebound. They're great. They're fun. They're fresh. They're so different than that horrible situation and relationship that you were in before, right? But you kind of always know that maybe I don't know if you'll end up spending the rest of your life with the rebound. You kind of always know that in the back of your mind. And to kind of translate this analogy to what I'm talking about, you may know that you never may actually win a championship with this coach, but it's a rebound coach. They're there in that transition period for you, and you guys can end up having some great memories together. But like I said, you always kind of know that one day things will probably come to an end, and here we are. Things are coming to an end. You're ready to kind of move on from your rebound and settle down and go find your soulmate and find somebody you're going to spend the rest of your life with and win you some championships. So I think that's really all that's happened with the Hawks here. As I've said before, go get our Steve Kerr to our Mark Jackson, right? So I think that's what we're trying to do now is get that Steve Kerr. And we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. I still stand by, and we'll stand by this even by the end of the season and into next season. But that it was still the best move for the Hawks to do this. Nate was just a little too old school in some of his approaches. I think not only on the court with some of his rotations and some of his defensive schemes and what have you, but also off the court. Obviously, most famously, his whole not wanting to develop young talent thing. I get that at that point in his career, maybe he just didn't really feel like doing that anymore, or maybe that was just an old school thing in general. It's just not something that really used to happen in the NBA. I'm not exactly sure, but clearly, him having that stance, not only did it rub some fans the wrong way, I think it clearly rubbed some of the players the wrong way by some of the comments that you heard come out today. I think most notably some of the ones that I heard, first, Clint Capella, I think his comment was pretty neutral. I think Clint kind of took the stance of, it's kind of on all of us, it's a team effort here. And, he's not completely wrong on that. He's not. As happy as I am, I do believe and understand that you cannot blame all of the problems on Nate. That's just not how something like that works. But you gotta cut the head off or do something, right? So I don't necessarily disagree with Clint, but I do think he was kind of taking a little bit of a media safe approach, if you will. Whereas I do think John was a little more honest, and I don't think John necessarily said anything bad whatsoever about Nate as a person or even necessarily as a coach. But I do think there was one comment that really stood out to me, and that was that maybe Nate would be better suited coaching a team that was older. So I think the best way to kind of put that, and I know with what I'm about to say that John isn't like starting his career, but he's still a very young man. We have to understand that. Like, I mean, I'm significantly older than John Collins, and I don't feel old at all. Okay, so it's these guys are young, but it's you got to think about it. You're starting your career in whatever field you work in, right? Whether this is healthcare, finance, real estate, whatever it is. Okay, you're starting your career. You're fresh out of college, and your manager is telling you that they're not going to spend any time helping you develop your skill sets for whatever position you have, right? I mean, how's that going to make you feel? Like, I think we're like forgetting this human element with these guys at times. I kind of mentioned that with the John Collins and the trade rumors. Well, this is the same idea, man. These are human beings that at the end of the day, no, they don't need to be sent down to the G League because they still need to be developed a little bit. Like whose game is completely polished at this point. Like, I mean, I think even LeBron James is still working on, polishing up some aspects of his game. And I'm just using him as an example purely because it doesn't matter, man. Like, what kind of approach are we taking that these guys don't need any level of development? So I think that just rubbed John the wrong way. Like, it would undoubtedly rub any of you the wrong way. Like, you don't want to sound like a jerk here, but you can lie to yourself and say that it wouldn't bother you, but you're doing exactly that and lying to yourself. It would undoubtedly bother you. It's human nature to be bothered by something like that. For Nate and in the analogy, your boss, those are people that are supposed to help you develop your skill sets. That's just how the universe works, man. That's how we progress as society, and that's how we help each other out. So, I think that clearly rubs some people the wrong way, and that's one small little part of it. And I'm kind of saying it that way because I highly doubt that was the only thing that Nate kind of had that approach, that old school approach of like, I'm not necessarily going to help you with that. So it clearly wasn't really working. And, at the end of the day, this is a guy who you take away 2021 when sure he did take us to a 27-11 record and obviously the Eastern Conference Finals and a couple wins and whatnot. Since then is basically set right at 500. And for a team that is as talented as we are, the front office has decided, and I think we've decided as fans too, that that's not acceptable. Okay. So, we needed something better. At the end of the day, we made the move, and I guarantee you we will not regret making this move, guys. But I will wrap up the whole little spiel on Nate with this. Nate did have to go, like absolutely had to go, and that's why he has gone. But I do agree, even though some people on Twitter I think are taking it a little too far. It's not every single problem is just going to be solved by Nate being fired and out the door. So, the Hawks still got some work to do. So with that being said, it's very, 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 very crucial who we hire next. I think this could arguably go down as one of the biggest decisions this franchise has ever made. Because you make the right decision here, and this guy could end up winning some championships, and I will die on that hill. So this is a huge decision they got to make here. So like I said, still got some work to do. But we'll kind of segue into that now that we, have kind of mentioned that. Obviously, what's the next step? You fire your coach, you got to hire one, right? So those of you who do not know, Joe Prunty will be the interim coach, but I do think he'll be exactly that. I don't see them writing it out with him like they did with Nate. And giving him a new contract after the season is over. I do think we'll probably hire someone here soon. Prunty will probably only coach a game or two, but we'll see what happens. Prunty, if you're listening, I think the only way you can stay, bud, is if you win us a championship. Which, if you do that, man, I'm perfectly fine with you staying. So, no hard feelings, though, Prunty. So the replacements that I think the three biggest replacements that have kind of been circulating around ESPN and Bleacher Report and whatnot have been Charles Lee, Kenny Atkinson, and Quinn Snyder. All three of these guys do have ties to the Hawks previously. They were on Coach Bud's staff back in 2013, 2014, I think 2015 as well. But those couple of years there where the Hawks won 60 games and had one of our greatest seasons in franchise history, right? So, all three of those guys do have ties to the Hawks, and I think that's pretty important. I don't think we're a franchise that necessarily carries that much respect necessarily, but I do want it to be somebody that has some level of ties to the organization previously. So I think all three of those guys would be good fits. And I'll kind of just go down the list with them here, starting with Charles Lee. I think Charles Lee is probably, and I'm probably not alone on this, probably the one that we all probably know the least about. But I will say he's in a very good situation right now. He's still on Coach Bud's staff in Milwaukee. He obviously won a championship a couple years ago, could very well win another championship this year. He doesn't have the head coaching experience like Kenny and Quinn do. Which doesn't mean that he's, not necessarily qualified because of it, but I just don't know if it's something that he would want to do, jump into it mid-season like this. If we wait until the off-season, hey, maybe I think, Charles Lee would be a little more comfortable to it. But as I just mentioned, I do think this is something that the Hawks are going to try and go and take care of in the next week or two. I'll say that. I probably think Charles Lee will stay put, but, if he comes over, I think, he's obviously been in a system right now that is proven to win you games in the NBA and even a championship. So, obviously, him bringing that pedigree over, I'm totally okay with that. But again, I don't think it's too likely. Moving down to Kenny Atkinson, this is a guy who I've seen his name circulate on Hawks Twitter for it feels like years now of people wanting him to come back because, again, part of that Coach Bud staff. The dude can seriously develop some talent, which obviously the situation that we were just in with Nate and the lack of that there and how it clearly made some of our players feel, even our star players feel, maybe because of that, he would be the best fit. I will say this, I think very similar to Charles Lee, though, he's just in a good situation. The guy just won a championship last year with Golden State. Golden State isn't doing too hot, but obviously they're Golden State, man. They get in the playoffs. They could easily, go on a run and win another championship. So again, I don't know if jumping mid-season, that'd be something he necessarily want to do. He also does have the experience. And with that being said, maybe he isn't, really wanting to go through the whole pressure of being a head coach in the NBA again. I kind of laugh because that's exactly what Nate McMillan just went through with this fan base and the front office. So, maybe he is like, hey, I'm in a good situation. I'm an assistant on one of the best teams in the league. And, I doubt he's hurting too bad financially. So again, I don't know if that one's super likely, but I have to admit, if I ranked all three of them, I would have Charles at 3, Kenny at 2, and then moving on to my number 1, I do think Quinn Snyder would be our best option of the 3. I do think he's the most proven of the 3. He has the most experience as a head coach, was the head coach in Utah for 8 seasons, led them to the playoffs in 6 of those, actually led them to the number 1 overall seed in 2020. This is a guy who not only would improve some of the rotations and schemes that we would have on the court, but I think most importantly would, kind of change the culture in the locker room. Because I got to admit, guys, I don't feel like we have the greatest culture in the locker room right now. And I'm not saying that I don't think the guys like each other or that they don't get along. I just think, I've been saying it for years. There's a certain culture that you have that, wins you championships. And that's why you see, the same teams slash same players and sports of all levels, same coaches as well, win championships over and over again because they figure out the formula. There's a formula to it. And a huge part of that formula is culture. Obviously, a huge part of it is talented as well, but huge part of that formula is culture. And Quinn Snyder's culture is one that like famously emphasizes openness and communication with his players. And that's just something that I think is more important in the league than it probably ever has been with this younger generation of players, especially with a team that's super young like the Hawks. I don't know if that's something that they maybe got with Nate. Nate, as I mentioned, was a pretty old school guy, and with being old school, I don't know if that's something you were necessarily providing. Which a lot of people could argue he doesn't have to provide that. Okay, that's a different argument, man. If your players are saying that's what they need, I think that's something that we kind of need to accommodate. But I think at the end of the day, any three of those guys were going to be in a good situation, a better situation than we were with Nate. But I don't think, we'd be in the same situation with all three, meaning, we could have one way, and one way, right? So, we really got to make the right choice here. And yeah, as I mentioned, it could be the biggest choice this franchise ever made. I guess it's worth mentioning a dark horse candidate in Ime Udoka. Udoka is somebody that obviously has a little bit of a polarizing stance right now, polarizing situation with the whole scandal. I read up more on it today than I ever did in the past because of the potential of him being a head coach here in Atlanta. And I got to say, it wasn't as clean as I thought it was, but it also wasn't something where I really think this man needs to be voided from society and whatnot. I won't get into anything like that because obviously that's a completely different conversation. But I will say, purely in a basketball sense, in an X's and O sense, I think he's got to be one of the younger, brighter minds out there right now. Obviously, what he did in Boston last year. Alex has, at this point, I feel like famously mentioned a few times that Boston last year, halfway through the season, was sitting at 500 and ended up making it to the finals, right? And a lot of that was him and his play calling and his I guess I don't know if I can use the culture word because I don't really know, but Boston seemed like they had a pretty good one. So point being is he's bright mind. Whoever ends up getting him, because eventually a team will either have his name be cleared or whatever, and he'll be hired. Whoever does, we'll get an incredible head coach. I will say that. So I don't know if it'll end up being the Hawks. I can say this because of everything that's kind of happened with him. If you're just looking at it in a basketball sense, we gotta want him. But if you're looking at it, the entire picture and the entire context, it's maybe something at this point we kind of just want to avoid. So, but hey, I'd love to get a guy from that Popovich coaching tree if we could. So yeah. And I guess but before I go into paying some bills around here from our guys at Firminate Solutions, I guess the last dark horse that is at least worth mentioning, because I'm sure most of you have seen a certain Instagram post from a certain Hawks player today that included them wearing a jersey of a player that has previously been a head coach in the NBA. And I'm, of course, referring to Trae Young wearing a Steve Nash jersey. And I'm really not going to provide any sort of analysis on this one, guys. I'm just going to leave it at this. It better not be Steve Nash. It better not be Steve Nash. No disrespect, Steve Nash. Grew up watching you. I'm right there with Trae Young. Think you're one of the best point guards of all time. But oof, man, we are not in a situation to be hiring some sort of experimental coaching hire. No, man. We got to have a proven winner, a guy who knows what he's doing, a guy who has a culture ready to go. And Steve, again, just like Udoka, I'm sure one day you will be a great coach. That day I don't think is here yet, and sorry, bud. Hopefully you do it with somebody else. But yeah, so with that being said, I as I mentioned, pay some bills around here. So yeah, guys, listen to this message from our guys over at Firmament Solutions. Check them out if that's something that you think you could use for your business or even for your personal use. But yeah, guys, check out this message. As always, thank you, Firmament.
When you need quick, effective, and accurate data cabling services, call Firmament Solutions. We care about your network infrastructure. Our services are white labeled, so you get the contracts. We provide the services. Our expertise includes low voltage communication, networking, electrical, physical security, and life safety equipment. We're industry leaders, providing 24-hour service coverage. So we ask, when is the best time to have one of our certified technicians assist you?
All right, guys. So we'll wrap up this week's episode with a little less coach talk and a little more look into the future, if you will. So it doesn't really matter who we hire, whether it's Quinn Snyder, whether it's Kenny Atkinson. Sorry, I was getting a brain fart there. Whether it's whoever, okay, that doesn't matter who it is. They're all going to be facing the same task, which is a very daunting task at that, and you're going to be having 23 games left, and 14 of them are at home, but you have the third toughest schedule remaining. And I'll be honest, because of that, unless somebody comes in and it is just this like switch that flips, I can't see us really doing too much. Our schedule is insanely tough to end the season. It feels like it's been tough all year, but that's just because we have been incredibly average. It is what it is. We got 14 at home, like I mentioned, so that, I feel like bodes a little bit more, a little better for us. But with that being said, I mean, we got to be realistic. It's not like we're going to win all 14 at home. So, with, like I said, we have 23 games. My prediction is that we will end the season to go 10-13. Maybe, if the coach comes in and really changes things and, really gets a spark plug under these guys and they start playing, incredible basketball, I could see 13-10, 14-9, maybe even 15-8. But I will say, I do think a 10-13, somewhere around their record is probably what we'll have for the remaining of the season, regardless of what coaching hire we make. I want to be incredibly optimistic. We can, we certainly can. I just, think this season is going to go down as a little bit of a wash for us Hawks fans, but that's okay because hey, we cut the fat and we're going to be looking beautiful next year. So, but hey, with all that being said, some people that are right around us in the standings or even kind of right above us, meaning Toronto, Brooklyn, and the Knicks, they all have difficult schedules remaining as well. So, who's to say that, we kind of catch fire and one of them slip up and we are still able to catch a top 6 seed. It will obviously be decided later on in the season. And, I'll say this, if you're hopeful that we do and you think this coaching hire is going to change that, I actually don't necessarily disagree with you. I'm just kind of trying to be a little more realistic and understand that, probably won't turn anything around this season just yet. But hey, I will gladly be wrong on that if we do. But hey, with the 10-13, that should still likely get us into the play-in. Whether that's, the 7-8 game or the 9-10 game, I'm not sure, completely sure, obviously. But I think like last year, if we get in the play-in, we could definitely win the one game or the 2 games that we need to actually be the 7 or the 8 seed. But that being said, I don't know how much noise we could necessarily make. I do think we will at least win more than one game like we did last year, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Like I mentioned, we're not the only ones that have a tough schedule going forward. So, but March will definitely go down as the biggest month of the season for the Hawks because it'll more than likely be right about when the new coach is being hired. We have an incredibly hard schedule in the month of March. I mean, it is a gauntlet of a schedule. We have our lone extended road trip after All-Star game, meaning that it's not just a one-off game on the road that we'll be gone for the night. We played both teams that were in the finals last year, so obviously, the Celtics and the Warriors. As I mentioned, it's just a gauntlet of the schedule, man. So it'll definitely determine whether or not we make it to the playoffs, to play in, top 6 seed. All these things are still in play for the Hawks, so I will not ignore that at all. But I think it really just matters how quickly that new coach is, able to kind of come in and get things rolling. Because Nate, obviously, as we all remember, he was already in the building. He was already, at practice with all the players. This will be a little different, so I don't think it'll be as seamless of a transition. But hey, this is something that all the guys clearly. Okay, I won't say clearly, but does seem like something that most of the guys wanted. So could be a good thing. So, but as I kind of mentioned before, I do think ultimately the 2022 and 2023 season will go down as one to kind of ultimately forget as a Hawks fan. I know, I know. I'm saying it to myself. I was like, "Damn, man, you've been pretty excited all episode. Now you're getting grim." And I think it's more just reality is kind of setting in of that this coaching change was needed. And last time we did this, we did go on a crazy run. So I'm not doubting at all that history doesn't have the chance to repeat itself. I think I'm more just accepting that it is more likely that we probably do have an above 500 record for the last 23 games. So maybe my prediction is wrong, but it is something that just because of how tough our schedule is and just some of the things we'll be going through as a franchise. I just don't know. I don't know. I say it with a smile because I'm still happy and I'm still excited. I still think this was the absolute best decision for us to make as a franchise. But I do understand that the rockiness of this road that we've been on hasn't exactly smoothed all the way out. So, but the smoothness, it's in sight, guys. We can see it. So yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap up this week's episode on that. As I mentioned, Alex will be on next week's episode. For those of you who are big readers on our articles, HawksFanTV AJ will actually be joining on an episode here soon too. So be looking forward to that. So yeah, guys, can't thank you enough. As always, thank you for following and supporting. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HawksFanTV. Check out our website at HawksFanTV.com. As I mentioned, that's where all the articles will be located. And whatnot. We got some other content in there too. I've done some feud reviews at the arena way back when. So check those out, guys. We love bringing you guys this content and gonna keep doing it. Thank you as always. And guys, we got things to smile about as Hawks fans. So thank you as always, guys. Looking forward to you next week, and go Hawks.